Okay, if I was to say the word church, if you're like most people, you would immediately think of a church building, a structure. And yet that's not how the New Testament defines church. I mean, the early Christians met in homes, not in church buildings or structures. What the New Testament means when it says church is people, a community of believers. Okay, so let's try another word. If you were to close your eyes, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word worship? Hey everyone, this is Mark Leeming from Segue to Reason, where you can learn right now things that have often taken me many years to learn myself. Now, whether this story is true or not, I don't know, but it makes for a great illustration for this video. Back in the horse and buggy days, a wealthy woman ordered her driver one very cold, stormy winter night to take her to the opera. And as she stepped inside, she left her driver to tend to the horses. And over the next couple of hours, she was moved to tears again and again and again. And yet when it was all over and she stepped back outside into the real world, she took no pity. She had no compassion upon her driver, who was sitting there shivering in the cold, dusted with snow. She had been emotionally moved by the artificial environment which took place within that structure, and yet it obviously had no lasting impact as soon as she stepped back outside into the real world. And dare I say, a very similar situation plays out again and again every Sunday morning as Christians exit their church structures and go out into the real world. A minute ago, I posed the question, what was the first thing to come to your mind when I said the word worship? Now, if you're a born-again Christian, you probably immediately associate worship with singing. More specifically, that period of time at the beginning of every church service where we sing songs about and to God. For example, next Sunday, if the pastor was to say, okay, it's time to worship, the worship team would immediately know that it's their cue to go up on stage and to start playing, and for the rest of us to start singing for the next 20 or 30 minutes. Yet, just as in the case with how our understanding, our usage of the word church doesn't exactly line up with what the Bible means when it says church, so too when it comes to our understanding of what worship is. To the ancient Israelites of the Old Testament, worship encompassed much more than just singing. There was the whole sacrificial system, the rites, the rituals, the ceremonies. And yet even that wasn't true worship. Because you see, for many of the ancient Israelites, they believed that as long as they did those things, then they were good to go throughout the rest of the week and they could do and live however they pleased. And yet, just as how the prophet Samuel said to King Saul that to obey God is better than sacrifice. As God said through the prophet Amos, I can't stand your singing. Your music is nothing but noise to me. Do what is right instead. And in the New Testament, we have Paul urging the Romans in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, to live lives holy and pleasing to God, because that is true worship. You see, worship isn't what we sing about God on a Sunday morning in a structure that we wrongly define as the church. Rather, it's how you live for Him once you exit that structure and go out into the real world.